and there's that NEG, N-E-G-G,
Newegg.
Newegg also. I just don't know exactly what requirements I really should make sure I have. I know I don't have a problem using external hard drives and for other stuff with Word and stuff using USBs and stuff, because I mean I save a lot of stuff on my laptop, but I use a lot of USBs too.
Melissa, I don't have your email. It'd be helpful. I can send you the specs I bought on that computer last year and the receipt if you want to look at it.
Yeah, that's cool.
If you can give me your email, I don't have it. You can just send it out on the chat and I'll take it, or just give it to me.
Yeah. I was trying to change my name. I was in panels over the weekend and there you go.
I wouldn't have guessed that email.
Arrow, come on, enough.
So DL, Brian, or anyone else, any other suggestions for Melissa until we move on?
Well, I'm going to let DL work on that because he's going to come up with specs and stuff for you, Melissa.
That's fine.
Oh yeah, I'm not gonna be ready anytime soon.
Yeah, it'll give him a little bit of time. It won't be during the meeting, but will get you some stuff because me and him did this for a long time before I bought mine, back and forth. But really, as far as that goes, what I said at the beginning is really the truth. You find the most expensive computer you can afford and buy it. I like the Intel processor. DL has got me almost completely sold on an AMD processor. So I know he's got me just about talked into building a home computer that's going to have an AMD processor most likely in it. So we'll see how that goes. But I put a lot of faith in DL when it comes to this stuff. So let him do his thing, and he'll let you know what's good and what's not. I can tell you that for sure.
Okay. I was even thinking of emailing DL to ask him for any suggestions or even just guidelines to look for the most in the heavy, what I would say heavy kind of program that I would run would be like Photoshop, Lightroom. I think I have that Aurora now, just.
Yeah.
Your Photoshop and Lightroom are probably going to be your most processor demanding, memory demanding programs that you run.
And that's what I figured. Yeah. And that's what I mean by heavy. Like, it's a lot of work.
Yep. I can say that once I settled on this one, which I paid, I do believe it was $1,500 for this one. I've been very happy with it. I'm very happy with the computer. It handles everything that I throw at it, which is a lot. And I do, I do fool around a little bit with video editing, and it has no issues with that at all. And that's where I seen some of the cheaper computers that I had issues was when I started messing with video. That's a huge memory grabber, and processor grabber. So.
Well, that's what I have my stimulus check. I saved it, and that's why I'm saying $1,000 computer. By the time I pay for taxes and shipping and whatever.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, DL will work something out, and DL, if we can maybe put that into some sort of document form, I'll post it on our Reddit page, available for people to take a peek at from time to time.
All right.
Okay, Jim.
All right. Let me see if I can.
And Rex is here, I see. Suzanne showed up while we were talking there. Gaylor,
team.
hi, guys.
Hi. Sorry I was late. I was outside cutting the grass. Lost track of time.
You're excused.
Thank you.
If I'd have been outside cutting the grass, I wouldn't have lost track of time because I'd have looked at my watch and went, in 3 minutes, I'm done. I don't care how much grass I cut.
I think I was out there about 4 hours.
Oh, goodness. I don't cut grass.
Hey, Brian, I went to do the share screen and I got a message that
Oh.
says host disabled.
Hang on, I can fix that. When Zoom updated, and I forgot to fix that since last night. Give me 1 second. I can fix that. Okay, you should be able to share now.
All right.
Zoom did another update and it changed some of my settings, and I forgot to go in and fix that since last evening. So
Okay, can you see Reddit?
Yep.
All right, good. And by the way, since I'm starting on Reddit, there's been a lot of photos posted over the last couple of weeks, but I'm pretty sure all of them are for the May Photographers Challenge, which means we really can't talk about them tonight. So it doesn't look like we'll have a Reddit review unless someone has photos that they want to share from their own screen, if you will, later on in the meeting.
I have a couple. I think I have 4. I mentioned yesterday evening that I thought we were going to talk about retouching, and I just had a few that I would offer to show real bad cases of acne with a brother and sister, and what I was able to do with it. I don't even have a lot of technical details, but I just have the items that you can look at to see the degree of fix that you can make.
yeah, we are gonna talk about that, Rex, and we are gonna look at your pictures, definitely.
Okay.
All right. And then Brian, are you planning on doing anything later in the meeting as well?
Yes, I have 2 YouTube videos amounting to about 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes. And then I'm going to do a demonstration on how to do a quick retouch on a portrait with some acne.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, pull the plug on me if I should approach an hour. How's that? I don't think it'll take that long.
Okay.
All right. So in the news, this first one, I think we might have talked about this some previous month. Nikon is supposed to come out with their D6. This says in 2 weeks, and the article was from earlier in May, so that 2 weeks may have expired by now. And Brian, I know you and probably others can speak to the Nikon itself, but this is in today's world, a relatively low megapixel camera. It's 20.8, but the price is high, $6,500. And I noticed in the article they talk about the improved autofocus capabilities of the camera. So, Brian, do you or anybody else have anything to share about this camera that you might know of?
Yes, this is a replacement for the D5. The D5 is Nikon's sports camera, and that's what this camera is. So the reason they're not a high megapixel camera is that it's just not necessary for print and stuff like that. So they don't worry so much about that. But the autofocus in the D5 and the improved autofocus in the D6 is supposed to be really, really, really good. I know the autofocus in the D5 was out of this world, and this is supposed to be better.
Wow.
So that's really the biggest part of that. The D6 is the autofocus, the better autofocus. And like I said, it's geared towards sports and fast moving objects and stuff like that is where they're pushing the D6 towards.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in on that one? Okay, now for you Canon lovers. The EOS R5 is supposed to be somewhat under $4,000, although apparently Canon hasn't come out with anything official yet. And again, I'm not familiar with the attributes of this thing. Any of you Canon users out there want to comment on the R5 at all?
Oh,
I'll take that as a no.
I don't know anything about it, so I can't comment on that one.
me neither.
Yeah, my 5D has just been going since 2004 and it hasn't quit yet. So
Mine
it gives
too.
me everything I need.
And this is a mirrorless camera.
I was just going to ask that. Is that a mirrorless camera?
It's
So you need either the appropriate lenses or adapters.
Okay.
I'm not interested.
And has been making a lot of
Yeah.
lenses for their mirrorless cameras.
I don't think this is mirrorless for some reason.
It
No,
is.
I like mirrorless.
Is?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty. And I don't know if any of our Sony users are on the call this evening. They're announcing a new full frame mirrorless camera coming out in June. And again, there's no cost that anyone has come across. It's at least there's nothing referenced in this article. So
It's a lot.
I imagine it would be a lot, yeah. Anybody in the call using Sony right now?
Yeah, I do.
You know anything about this one, Suzanne?
Not really. I know about the A7Rs, but I don't know anything about A7Ss. And I have a really old Sony. It's not even a professional level camera. It's kind of mid-range.
Yeah, this article doesn't have any technical details on it. Okay, we'll move on to using your smartphones for photography. Apple, as they do every year, comes out with new models with more and better features for their cameras. And as good as their low light photos seem to be in their latest model, they're claiming that the next version, version 12, will have improved low light photos and in-body image stabilization. And I didn't see, I don't think there's any, there's also going to be a 3x telephoto lens on it, 3x zoom telephoto lens. And I didn't see any pricing information on it. But any of you are looking to upgrade your iPhone, I guess they come out sometime in the fall.
You know what's funny? Do you guys remember a year or so ago, I showed you a Android-based camera that had like 25 lenses or something on the back of the camera? Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, so it was probably a year or maybe 2 years ago that I showed that at this point. And here's Apple that had one camera on the back of their phone, then two cameras, then three, and now I'm looking, there's four on this one. They're working their way up to that 25 that was on that Android-based camera a couple years ago.
Just a matter of time, huh?
I've heard that this is supposed to be really good as far as the camera-wise goes, though.
The next article, and there, we don't really have to go through anything. Oh, I'm sorry, that isn't the one I want to talk about. Just in passing, I don't particularly watch American Idol myself, but as most TV shows have been impacted by the pandemic and the stay at home, American Idol was able to continue its production this year or this spring. And Pat watches it quite a bit. And so every once in a while, just kind of stick my neck in and see what's going on. And all their performers were performing at home. And apparently, the production company sent them all an iPhone and some rigs. So all of that, all the shows or the music presentations on American Idol this season were done using iPhones. So I thought was kind of interesting.
Huh.
Now that'd be one way to make sure that they're all of the same quality too,
Yeah.
so that somewhat fair, but they know what they're dealing with when they have to try to put everything together in production.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, we're talking about computers then. And unfortunately, Melissa, these might be outside of your price range. But Apple's coming out with a new 13-inch MacBook Pro. Just out of curiosity, those on the call, is anybody using Apple computers for their post-processing?
I do.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. This one, depending on the specific model, it's between $1,300 and $1,800 for a 13-inch screen. And I think the difference in price has a lot to do, obviously, with the amount of memory in it. But for those who are interested, and I don't know if it has a release date here or not. Doesn't have the right keypad for you, Melissa. Forget it.
Yeah, Apple doesn't tend to do the number pad on the side.
Yeah.
Because even the keyboard from my iMac doesn't have the separate number pad.
Yeah. Although you can buy an extra, you can buy one with it.
Yeah.
There's some of the cost and detail information there you can take a look at. I didn't see whether it's out in the market now. Oh, it says available today. So it is available now.
I have one of those keyboards with the numbers on it for a Mac here, but I can't get it to show up on the video. When I put it up there, it disappears.
Oh.
But I have one.
What do you
You
do?
have to turn your background off.
Painted green.
Well, MacBook Pros are really good. And
Yeah,
I have one of the first ones, and it actually still functions, even though I haven't been able to update it in any way, shape, or form for probably 5 years. It's 13 or 14 years old, and it still works.
Mine still works, and then the battery blew up in it, and I took it apart and took the battery out of it, and I just run it on direct power. It still works.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say the battery blew up, it literally bent the case, the aluminum case. It went bad. But it still works.
Can't argue with success.
Not to be outdone, Microsoft is coming out with a new Surface Book 3. And this is kind of the same price range. In the article, it states between $1,500 and $2,300. Although I think that's the starting price, depending on which size you want, either a 13 or 15-inch screen. Again, I don't see whether that's out in the market now or not. When I was looking for my laptop, I saw a lot of good things about the Surface Book. Is anyone using one of those now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I use one of them right now.
Mhm.
Any thoughts?
I actually switched over from a MacBook because of the port issues. I was using a MacBook for about 8 years, and I was looking for something just like as an alternative that had more USB ports and was just as portable and stuff. And I really like it. I have an older one at this point, but I kind of maxed out the capabilities. But the screen's very solid. I like the keyboard. I like the build quality. I mean, I'd recommend one.
DL, you any comments on this one?
On which one?
On the Surface Book? Just the models in general?
I've never used one, so can't really talk about it.
Okay. I put this one on here, not that any of you would be interested necessarily, but just for information's sake. So I've been using Capture One for about the last 6 months or so for my post-processing. And I switched to that pretty much primarily because of Capture One's affiliation with Fuji and their implementation of the film simulations from the camera into the software. So it's gotten a lot of good reviews for its use as a raw editor for Fuji files. But Capture One also is known to be relatively expensive. If you get its full version, I think it's roughly $300 for a license. And they also have a subscription model, but I think it's maybe $15 a month or so. So certainly a lot higher than the Photoshop Lightroom version. And Capture One cannot come close to doing anything like you would be able to do in Photoshop itself. But when I got Capture One, they have a lower priced version that basically just processes Fuji files, and that's all I need. So I was able to get it for $130, and they also have a version for Sony. The same deal, it's $130. Well, they just announced here a week or so ago that they're coming out with a Nikon-only version for $130. So if for any reason you happen to have an interest in getting away from Lightroom and you have a Nikon, maybe you should put Capture One on your list of things to inquire about.
Well, if we're still talking about laptops, I just got this maybe less than a year ago. Lenovo Yoga 920. Bought it through Newegg. It was $800. Its storage is 256 gigabytes on board. Graphic card is UHD 620, which DL or Brian, you guys probably know what that is. It's an Intel Core i7 8th generation, and it has a 256 gigabyte SSD in it. Anyway, enough of that. But and it's a 13-inch screen, and I'm really happy with it, but I run into the same problem. It has a mini USB that I have to have an adapter so that I can use the Wi-Fi on the mouse. So that occupies the only one that I have besides the power output, and the power output appears to serve as a USB and the power, or I should say input. And then it has a USB on the right side that's full size. It handles, I think, USB 3. So for $800, and it has a beautiful screen, and it's slim as an old 33 1/3 record, almost, maybe a couple of those put together. And it's light, it's easy to handle, and it's been behaving itself. And I still have the Studio XPS, which is a 16-inch, and then the 24-inch screen behind it. And that is old. And the fellow that takes care of these for us put in an SSD drive in it, so it was like having an old car with a new engine. And it's driving everything. I mentioned some time ago that Photoshop is outrunning it, and probably a few more of us too, with the demand on graphics. So some of the graphics, I have them available because I always take the downloads, but I can't use them unless I have a better graphics card, which is probably going to mean a new computer.
Thanks, Rex.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody who watches the evening news, since the countries begin to open up, there's been photos like this where beach scenes in particular, where a long focal length camera has been used to take the photo, and everybody looks like they're scrunched together like sardines. And that's what this particular article is talking about, that rather than go through that one, I thought this next one is a little bit more interesting because it shows someone, I think this is over in Europe somewhere, took a series of photos from different angles to kind of show how maybe a photo can be fake news, if you will. So they come in pairs. So if you look at this one here, there's all these people standing in line, literally back to back to back to back. And here's that same group of people, but from a camera angle across the street. And it looks pretty much like they're practicing good social distancing there, but you would never know it from the photo on the left.
I was going to make a comment last night at one of Dennis's photos of Twin Lakes. You know, where you were using all the V's with the corner of the rail.
Yep.
The one where there was more distance of the water between the reflection and the railing,
Yep.
it made it look like it was actually bigger, like further back than what it was because of that distance.
Oh, yeah, good point.
So I think angle has a lot to do with it. Depending on an
There wasn't-
angle.
I mean, that whole environment was the same perspective, and it's only the camera tilt up or down that makes that difference.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's interesting.
Yep. The next pair, and again, it looks like these people aren't real close to one another, but when you take a look here, they're spaced, I don't know how far apart that would be, but they're not even close to one another. And I think there's another set here. Here's two people talking to each other. People sitting at tables adjacent to each other that aren't even close. So anyway, you get the picture. But certainly the news has been making an awful lot about the social distancing and it not occurring, and particularly the beach photos. They seem to be prone to do that. Okay, this is Nature Photography of the Year. There's the grand prize mammals winner. Lighting's certainly nice in that.
Mm.
Bird category.
Beautiful.
I assume they intentionally didn't try to freeze the action on that one because it does have kind of a neat look to it.
I guess Hitchcock would like that one.
Yeah. There's a nice close-up of a crocodile or an alligator. I think what's amazing about that one, and I don't know how much post-processing work was done on it, but obviously the yellow eye, your attention focuses on it, it just zeroes right in on it. And everything else is almost the same shade of gray. Plants and plants. Trees or plants. Okay.
Actually looks like an aerial shot from a mountaintop.
Yeah.
Well, it's certainly from above. Yeah. Yeah. What's interesting about this one, I think, is it would be a good photo without this tree here. But that one just kind of jumps out and stands out from everything else in the scene. It's amazing.
Makes a good clue to what's going on.
That's interesting looking.
I don't know. It just seems like there's a lot of space above the tree for my liking.
Atmosphere.
Mm.
I know, but still, it just seems like there's just too much between the tree and the clouds or smoke or whatever the heck that is.
Minimalist.
Yeah.
Whoop.
What the?
I mean, I assume you all see the silhouette of the bird there on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
And it looks like you're looking through the treetops, if you will, on the extreme right side. But I don't know what else I'm looking at in that photo.
That's not a good sign. It's obviously a winner, but yeah, if the photographer's idea was to keep your attention to try to figure out what's going on, he's doing a good job on me.
Yeah.
Because it looks like there's fireworks over there, and there's a bird.
To me, it looks like it's a morning mist and the morning sun's coming through and the bird's singing its morning song.
What's that source of that sparkly stuff on the upper right hand? What is
You know
that?
what's funny is I occasionally will do the sun flare type photos, but I've only seen one flare at a time. Can you physically get more than one in a single shot?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it's cellophane.
Yeah,
Light
maybe.
reflecting off of it all bent up.
Ah,
I thought it was fireworks.
Is there any story that goes with it at all?
no.
Hmm.
Flooded with Light is the title of the photo. Well, it does get your attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. It's unique.
It almost doesn't look real.
Yeah.
So Beth, you're our waterfall expert. Have you ever seen one that approaches that?
Not one with that many separate little things, no.
That's what's amazing about it.
Does it say where that was taken?
Let's see. I can't pronounce it, but it's an island somewhere. Hronfossa?
I'm gonna guess it's a typo and it's supposed to say Iceland.
Oh, you might be right. You might be right.
Because I know that there are some really cool places over there.
I'm just looking at it, trying to figure out where I could drive my tiny truck up through there and see if I can make it. It looks
Where
like,
is it?
looks like some good lines for a truck to go up through there.
Uh-huh. Looks like some good lines for a truck to come back down too.
Hello, Annie. Welcome.
Welcome.
Hi.
And that was the last of them. And that's the last of me.
Okay.
I was going to look up that island, see if it's an island. H.
Yeah.
Back to you, Brian.
All right. Let me see here. So we were going to talk about skin retouching was the plan for this evening, if I read all of my information correctly. Skin retouching, yes. Okay. So I've got two videos that are, one's 12 minutes, the other one's 6 minutes. So they're not real long. I thought they were both pretty good because they were kind of basic idea of skin retouching. And then I'm going to do a tutorial. And if you guys notice in the chat, I uploaded a file of the photograph that I'm going to work with. So if you want to follow along in Photoshop of your own while I do the tutorial, you can. You have the file. Is kind of the plan there. So I'm going to go ahead and run one of these videos here in just a second as soon as I remember how to do this. Let's see here. Screen share, computer, that, screen to share. Okay, you guys should see YouTube now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, we do.
All right, so we're going to take a look at this video here. It's called Skin Retouching Basics. It's 6 minutes long. I thought it was a pretty good one because it touches on a couple different things, all going through of things that you would do if you were doing a retouch on a portrait. But it doesn't get so in depth that we're all going, I don't know what they're talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and start this one, and let's see, let's make it full screen and play.
Basics in Photoshop. Hello and welcome to Flurn. My name is Aaron Nace. You can find me on flurn.com, where we make learning fun. In today's video, we're going over some of the basics of skin retouching, and while skin retouching is its own genre with many, many different tools and techniques, we wanted to create a quick video to help you get into the idea, the basics, and things you can get done in a short amount of time. In this video, we'll show you how to remove blemishes as well as flyaway hairs, and how to even out skin tone using dodging and burning. Here's our sample image, and you can download this on flurn.com. Just follow the link in the description right down below. So the first thing we're going to do is a little bit of blemish removal. I'm going to create a new layer. We're going to go ahead and zoom into our image just a little bit, and we're going to navigate over to our spot healing brush tool, which is our go-to tool for removing blemishes. So let's go to spot healing. My type I want to have set to content aware. Make sure we're set to sample all layers, and you want to be on a new layer. So we're going to go ahead and zoom in, and let's say we want to get rid of this little flyaway hair, just some of these hairs that are over top of our subject. What I'm going to do is simply click and drag right over top of the hair, simply painting over the top of the hair. If you miss anywhere, not a big deal, just paint over it again. And the spot healing brush tool will sample areas that are similar to wherever you're painting and simply remove those objects. So for object removal like flyaway hairs, this is the best tool for the job. You can also use this tool to get rid of things like fine lines and wrinkles. Let's go ahead and move in. We're just going to reduce some of these fine lines under our subject's eyes. And for the most part, our subject has fantastic looking skin, so there's not too many blemishes. But you can see even for these smaller details, this does a great job. Now, sometimes our subjects do have blemishes on their skin, so we'll show you how to remove those as well. Again, with the spot healing brush tool, I'm going to use this as a little example here. Now, this is just a mole, and typically I would not remove this. I'll just show you how to do it, and then we're going to bring it right back. All you have to do is paint right over top of the object that you'd like to remove. There we go. We'll let go. And if it doesn't look exactly like how you want it, it's not a big deal. Most of the time, you just have to paint a little bit more, and you're good to go. Now, if you do need to fill in any more detail, you can grab the clone stamp tool and sample with the clone stamp tool. So I'm going to hold Alt or Option and sample right here, and then I'm just going to simply paint a little bit right there, and you can see it fills that area in very nicely. Now, in my personal opinion, things like moles on a person's face are a defining feature, so I prefer to actually leave those in place. So let's just go ahead and grab the eraser tool. I'm going to hit E for the eraser tool. I'm just going to erase my changes, and we'll just make sure that that comes right back. We still have gotten rid of our flyaway hairs and some fine lines and wrinkles. Now it's time to smooth out some of the highlights and shadows on your subject's face. And to do this, we're going to do a simple method of dodging and burning. So for dodging and burning, let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit more. We don't want to be too far zoomed in. We're going to go to layer, down to new adjustment layer, and over to curves. Hit OK, and this time we're going to make just a little bit of a brightness adjustment. This is going to be our dodge layer. So let's go ahead and double click and call this dodge. There we go. Now the next important step here is you want to change your blending mode from normal. You want to go down to luminosity. This way it'll just affect your lights and darks and it won't affect your color. Now on our layer mask, we're going to hit Control or Command I to invert our layer mask, making this layer invisible. So Control or Command I will make our white layer mask black. Now all we have to do is use our brush tool and paint on the areas that we want to lighten up a little bit. Now, big key here, you want to make sure that the flow of your brush is set relatively low, down to about 10%. And in this case, I'm going to lighten areas up. So I'm going to paint over some of these areas that are just a little bit darker. Okay, these areas maybe under our subject's eye. You can see they're just a little bit dark to begin with. So just by painting over there, it's very easy to simply lighten these up. You want to choose your brush size about the size of the blemish or the dark area that you'd like to cover. So if you're working on a large area, go ahead and choose a large brush size. If you're working on a small area, just choose a small brush size. There we go. And you can see as I paint on, we're simply lightening up these dark areas and kind of making them disappear. So let's just show you, there's the before and the after, just getting rid of some of these little dark areas there. Now we're going to do the same thing, except instead of dodging, we're going to go ahead and burn. Let's go to layer, down to new adjustment layer, and over to curves. This time we're going to pull our curves down just a little bit. You don't have to go too far here. We're going to change our blend mode from normal down to luminosity. There we are. Let's invert our layer mask by hitting Control or Command I. And this time we're going to just simply paint on some of the lighter areas, and it's just going to darken them down just a little bit. And the result is skin that just looks a little bit more smooth. So we're taking the light areas and darkening them down just a little bit, and the dark areas and lighting them up. So you can see here, subtle changes. Those bright areas, we're just making them a little bit dark, and those dark areas we're making a little bit brighter. Let's go ahead and take a look at our before and after. Here's our image before and the after. While this was a quick video and showing just the basics, you can take these same principles and apply them to your entire image, making a huge difference to your photos. Now, if you want to learn about professional level retouching, I highly suggest our pro tutorial, How to Master Frequency Separation Retouching. It's available.
Okay, so that was that one. I like the way he used the dodging and burning just to make those slight adjustments there, which I think made I don't know who this is that just came up and said they want to join. I'm going to let them in and find out who they are. Oh, it was Jim. I think, no. Oh, it's Annie. Okay. Annie's coming back. Her power went out.
Yeah, I was wondering if her power went out too. Mine went out.
Did it? Yeah, hers did.
Yeah.
So, so anyhow, I just like the idea of that dodging and burning to make those adjustments there. And that wasn't a whole lot of skin retouching in that, but it does the spot healing brush in Photoshop is pretty amazing. It does a really good job, which we're going to show I'm going to show you the little tutorial that I do. Anyhow, let's go over to the other video. And this one's a little bit more involved. And I want to see if anyone notices. I learned something about Photoshop I did not know existed. And I want to see if anyone notices what it is when we get to the end of the video in this. And I was like literally going, wow, I didn't know that happened. You could do that. So see if anyone picks it up in this video. Ooh, crap.
Hi there.
I hit the wrong button. I skipped to the next video.
Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a few quick ways that you can start retouching skin and not have to basically spend 3 or 4 hours retouching a single photo, because I've been getting a lot of requests lately for a simpler retouching tutorial, and it's something that I have been wanting to do for a little while, because I do think that as great as dodge and burn is and as great as frequency separation is, sometimes you can spend a long time doing both of those things. And I just wanted to really go through a few of the tools that I use if I'm doing a quicker retouch. It's not often these days that I do a quicker retouch, because most of my work is beauty and fashion related, and most of my beauty images unfortunately sometimes require a couple of hours worth of editing depending on the image. But I figured for a lot of photographers out there who don't have to spend too much time on retouching, like maybe if you're a wedding photographer and you really don't have the time to be spending a few hours on each photo, hopefully this tutorial might be good for you. So I'm going to go through the first few tools that I would use for a quick retouch and the way that I would do it. So to explain a little bit better, the first thing that I would do for a quick retouch is just by duplicating the background layer here. So we just drag that into the new layer box just over here, and we'd get a background copy. So this is basically where I do some of my healing work. And the healing tools are just located over here on the left-hand side of the toolbar. And you've got a few different ones. So you've got the spot healing brush tool. I quite often use this even in conjunction with my dodging and burning for a lot of my beauty work. I find it's a really versatile tool, and it doesn't affect too much of the skin and the quality of it either. The healing brush tool is another good one, and the patch tool. The patch tool is a little bit different. I do find that sometimes the patch tool can lessen the quality, and I don't always like to use it depending on the style of editing that I'm doing. But for a quick retouch, I generally stick to the spot healing brush tool just here, because it is quick to use, and also, like I said, it does retain image quality pretty good depending on how you use it. So I'm just going to start to zoom in here on Hannah's face, and I'm going to show you what I would quickly do for a quicker retouch. So for the healing brush tools, I would use the spot healing brush to just go over any little pimples or blemishes on the face and just quickly get those out the way first off. I'd also make sure that in the brush settings up here that pen pressure is selected with my tablet, because I find that it's a little bit more easily directed onto the areas that you want to edit, and I just feel like you've got a little bit more control with that. So I'm going to continue removing some of the blemishes here just quickly. And now there were certain times where I probably would use the patch tool, but I would use it very sparingly and not consistently throughout the image, because it can tend to lower some of the image quality when you're using it. So I'm going to just select the patch tool and show you guys what that will do. Just this area here that I want to make a little bit more even, I'm just going to move that down there. And just over here where this blemish is, I'm just going to move that across just to give that a little bit more texture. But that's pretty much as far as I would go with the patch tool on certain areas. I wouldn't be doing the whole face with the patch tool, just because I prefer using the spot healing brush to begin with. So I'm going to go back to the spot healing brush and continue just with these little blemishes down here. You can also use the spot healing brush for any fine lines and hairs, which is actually really great and why it's such a versatile tool overall. So obviously I could go on and do more, but this is a quick retouch, so I'm going to stop there. And as you can see, I've just removed any of the little bumps on the skin, any of the main ones for this particular image. So now I'm going to show you guys how I would do a very quick dodge and burn. So I'm going to actually rename this one now, just so I don't confuse you guys. And this one's going to be healing tools. Now I'm going to duplicate this background layer again, but the top layer this time, and then we're going to rename this dodge and burn. And this is how I would do a very quick dodge and burn. So To do a quick dodge and burn, I would usually just use the dodge and burn tools over on the left-hand side here. It is not very often that I would use these alone. There's lots of different ways to dodge and burn in Photoshop, and this is usually the way that I wouldn't choose. But if I was doing a quick retouch, or if I was doing types of portraiture where retouching wasn't as important, definitely this is something that I would use to do quickly. So usually I would stick to the midtones. I would make the brush size a little bit bigger and keep it quite soft, and the exposure will just move down to 1% here. And then I'm just going to start filling in some of the darker areas on the skin tone that are a bit shadowy, just to kind of even out the skin a little bit, but I'm not going to spend too much time with this. It's just going to be in the main highlighted and shadowed areas. This isn't going to be like a full dodging and burning tutorial. So we're just going on any little dark spots on the skin tone and just sort of filling them in a little bit more, just to kind of even the skin tone out quite quickly. So just remembering, if you've watched my previous dodge and burn tutorials, you know that I don't tend to use just the dodge tool, which is quite commonly done, and it's kind of, I guess, a very common mistake that a lot of people do tend to make. It's always good to use the burn tool as well for the shadowed areas, just so you keep that definition with the skin. So I'm going to continue using the burn tool on the midtones at 1%. I'm just going to go over any bits over here that are a little bit lighter and just need to be evened out a little bit more. I'm just going to keep this really quite natural. This is really what this tutorial is all about, is just keeping the skin very natural. This is a natural edit. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and you can see that the dodging tool, when I turn that layer on and off, you can see how that's just kind of smoothed out the skin just a little bit, to the point where it gives you that nice texture still, but it's helping with the light and shadow a little bit more. So now my next step for a quick retouch would be to just create a brand new layer, just with this button here. And then we're going to rename this one Texture. And this is the part of my quick retouch where I would grab the paintbrush tool on a very soft brush, and we'll make it 0% hardness and just bump up the size of the brush a little bit. And we'll keep the flow on about 4%. And this is where I'd start to get the eyedropper tool and go over the places in the skin where the texture's a little bit too uneven still. And this will help really quickly get it looking a little bit more even, and especially tone-wise as well if it's still not. So I'm going to eyedrop just a color probably around here. And now I'm going to start just painting over the skin tone, just to kind of soften it up a little bit so we don't have too much texture there. And I'm going to keep using the eyedropper to select different areas of the face so I can start to paint over those uneven areas. So as you can see, I'm just using different parts to help smooth the skin a little bit more. And I keep changing the brush size as well, just so it has a little bit more direction on where we need the texture and where we don't. So you do have to be quite light-handed with this, but it is a much quicker way of just kind of smoothing out the skin so it still looks nice and soft, but still retains a bit of the texture as well. So this probably takes the longest, I'd say, out of everything, just really putting those final touches on the quick retouch. Okay, so I'm going to turn this layer on and off in a second just to see how we're going with the skin texture, and you guys can see what a difference that is making. So if you wanted, you can lower the opacity on that texture layer. If you feel like you've gone a bit far, you can just kind of bring that down a little bit to say 80% instead of the 100%, and you still have a really natural effect. So I'm going to go ahead and take a snapshot now and show you guys the before and after. So this is the before, and that is the after. Now that's just doing a really quick retouch. I've probably been working on this photo for say 10 to 15 minutes or so. I mean, you can make it quicker than that. I suppose I'm probably just doing a little bit more on this image because it is a closer up image, but this would generally work very quickly on an image that is further away of a portrait. So I'm just going to go through all the layers so you can see what each layer has done. So I'm going to click all of the layers, so the texture and the dodge and burn layer off, and then you can see what the healing tool layer has done. And then the dodge and burn on top of that. And then the texture layer on top of that has really helped smooth it out a little bit more. So I'm going to show another before and after now. So the before and the after. So guys, I hope you really enjoyed this tutorial and I hope it was helpful for you. I know I've had a few people asking me about this sort of tutorial for a while now, so I thought I'd really get into gear and finally get one out for you guys. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please do. And please let me know what you want to see on my channel.
Okay, guys. So, did anybody pick up the one thing that I didn't know Photoshop had in it?
Dragging to do a copy of the layer.
No, I've done that one.
Well, I don't know if it's what you're thinking of, but could you explain the patch tool? Because I didn't quite understand what she was doing.
Well, actually, the patch tool basically does just that. It does exactly what it says. So basically, you do a selection of an area, and then slide that down, and the area that you slide down to goes back to where you did your original selection.
It'll copy it over.
So is it like the clone stamp tool then?
In a sort, yeah.
It is in a sort like a clone stamp, but it is not the clone stamp because you're not clicking and clicking and clicking. You can actually take a larger area and decide which part of that you want to send back to the original selection.
Try me again, I'm sorry.
Wait, let me find it in the video.
You select an area and move it, you click and drag to find a spot that you want to copy onto that spot you just selected.
And I hear that, and that makes sense. I guess, so how's that different than the clone stamp?
You're not selecting and then clicking and selecting and like
just selecting and dragging. You're
well,
saying
yeah.
One of the nice parts about the patch tool is it doesn't have to be a single round dot like the clone stamp does. So the patch tool, you can take a selected area. So if it needs to be a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right and around the corner here, you can make that happen because you're making a selection and then filling that selection in, that whole selection at one time.
Okay.
Does that make it more sense?
It does, yeah.
Okay. We can do one whenever I get to my picture here in just a minute. I'll do a quick patch tool and show you how it works.
I think I was like the only one a little offended when she was taking out the lines. That just bothers me when they do that in these photos that they put in magazines and stuff. But I like the texture layer. I'm not 100% sure how she can get that to work right, but I like that idea.
Well, if you really start looking at the skin retouching and textures, keeping the texture layer, then you're going to look at, and she mentioned it right at the beginning, it's called frequency separation.
Yeah.
When you get into frequency separation, which I chose not to do that because I didn't want to confuse a lot of people. That's a little bit more in depth as far as how that works. But you can do a frequency separation, make all kind of adjustments, and then put the texture back into the skin, and it stays there. And it really works well. And I believe, if I remember correctly, I think Paul did a demonstration a while back on how that works at one of our meetings. And I can do that in the future, but I thought for tonight I wanted to stick a little bit more basic. But if you do some video or some YouTube video searches for frequency separation in retouching, it'll show you how to really keep that texture in a picture as you're working on it.
Yeah, that one confuses me in trying to do it.
Which is the reason I chose not to work on it tonight as a
Yeah.
tutorial. But anyhow, let's pop over to Photoshop.
So what was it that she pointed out?
Oh, I'm sorry. So it's actually on the screen right now. If you look right here, it says snapshots.
Oh.
I didn't know you could do that in Photoshop. That was a new one for me. I've done it in Lightroom for years, or for a long time now, where I do different snapshots at different points and I can come back to that point. I didn't know that you could do it in Photoshop until today, whenever I was watching this video. And I went, wait a minute. She just said that, and I backed it up, and what? Yes, you can do snapshots at different points during the video, or during your work. So,
Before you go there, it's just a little humor. If you look at the frame line, the frame information, what I noticed is it had edit, 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 edit.
Yes.
It's one of those things that I wondered, does it always have to be that way? I find myself later on, when I have it back in the library mode, I'll go down and I'll rename it, because the original name will always be there, but the name that I can give it is the same thing, except I take out all of those edits, just so, I don't know, I just feel like having a shorter name is easier to work with.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, also, I thought that there was a way that you can reduce the number of edit repetitions that you get when you go from Lightroom to Photoshop and then Lightroom to Photoshop again.
I think there is, but I don't remember what it is.
I think we've even talked about it before, but it was a long time ago, and it really doesn't make a big difference. It's just that it's kind of funny when you see edit, 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 edit.
Yeah, it has something to do with the way it saves it back to the way you send it back to Lightroom, and it doesn't add that edit to it. But I can't remember how that works. All right, we okay to go to Photoshop then?
Away we go.
I lost Melissa. I thought she wanted to be here. She's still here. She just ran away from her chair. All right, so I sent this picture over to you guys through the chat if you wanted to download it. If not, it's up to you. It doesn't really matter. This is an Adobe stock image that I went and found with someone that had a few blemishes on their face, and I thought, well, we could use this as a how to do tutorial type thing. Now, a lot of times we see portraits being done, and they're just extremely, extremely smooth. They almost look like a Barbie doll skin with no texture at all, no pores or anything like that. So we're going to lean towards that just a little bit and then come backwards to what I think looks better. So this is actually a pretty easy setup. It's a 13-step process to do a tutorial on this. And we're going to start out. We got our photo open. That was step number 1. So having a photo in Photoshop actually helps when you're doing a retouch. The next thing you want to do, and this is one of the things that I've learned in Photoshop, is do a lot of layers. Don't put everything, don't try to do too much work on one layer, because then if you need to throw that layer away because you screwed it up, then you lose too much work. So the first thing I do is do a duplicate layer on anything that I work on, And you can do that by hitting Control or Command and the letter J. And you'll see in my layer panel, I now have a second layer, layer number 1. Do that all the time. So on this layer, I'm going to go ahead and decide to fix my few little blemishes that I have here, take care of some of these blemishes, pimples, dots, that kind of stuff. I'm going to do that. And actually, Jim, we're going to go ahead. I'll show you how that patch tool works here in a second. So I'm going to pick the patch tool, and we're going to do a selection here. And you can see how I can do a weird selection. And then if I just grab that and move it down here, see how it filled in that whole selection.
Okay, and you can drag anywhere on the image that you want to grab those other pixels.
You grab what you want to fill in. So actually, you could use the patch tool in a landscape setting to put a tree in a different spot.
Yep.
Okay. But as you heard in the last video, I do believe that I'm not a big fan of the patch tool. It works, but I do personally like using the spot healing brush more. And it's just a kind of just a little bump, and we can fix some things up.
Hey, Brian, I'm sorry. Before you go on, as far as the patch tool goes, is it a pixel for pixel like the clone stamp tool is, or is there some healing that's going on with it as well? On this sample, I can't really tell.
Okay, so if you look at the settings up here, it is a patch tool, which is normal, is what I use there, and it uses a source to fill in. So it's going to take when I move that patch tool, here, we'll do it again. When I move this here, it takes exactly what's inside the patch that I moved and puts it over to the other place, pixel by pixel.
Okay.
Okay. You can do a content aware up on the top here where you have your patch, you have a content aware, and you can do a content aware where Adobe makes some decisions on what it's doing there for you.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. I'm going to go back to my spot healing brush and just catching a few little things here and there. Leave the moles like the one gentleman said. I don't like to remove that kind of stuff.
Can I jump in on that one?
Yes, absolutely. Unless the client tells you to remove the mole. Go ahead, Rex.
Yeah. Well, yeah, in a case where they haven't said anything about it, my tendency is to take it out and then start putting it back in very slowly, so it's just a bit of what it was. In photographing the teachers in the schools, I've done it a lot, and I've never gotten any bad feedback from any of the teachers that I photographed. And so many of them, I mean, we all have irregularities on our face, and some that really are a part of us, I'll take out, and then I'll start letting it back in again till I think that it looks about right. So that's my decision, and I've never gotten thumped for it or anything like that. So for something that really identifies the person that they really would expect to see when they get their pictures back, I would leave a little bit of it in to say no more.
Yeah. Good advice. And a lot of times, sometimes the person that you photographed will come and say, hey, you know that mole, get rid of it, take it away, I don't want to see it there.
Yeah.
Then you remove it. It's no big deal. But it should be, like Rick said, it's nice that it's still visible for people, because it is a defining feature of the person. But anyhow, you kind of get the idea of what I did. I just cleaned up some of the stuff that was sticking around that I didn't like and needed cleaned up a little bit. And like I said, the spot healing brush is really good. It works really well in Photoshop. So feel free to use that. I'm not going to mess with the lines around her eyes, because I think those are hers. As Melissa said, that I don't think she liked whenever he removed the lines around that other lady's eyes. But we're going to leave them in there for now. So once I've done that, that's my first layer that I've done. I went ahead and I've adjusted, I fixed some of those blemishes and stuff, and I'm going to let that go at this point. That's good enough for, at least for what we're doing.
Hey, Brian, getting back to Rex's comment about, I think, I forget the exact words he used, but showing through. And Melissa's comment about the lines, if you were to, I assume there's like an opacity adjustment that if you would attempt to remove that darker part, you don't have to remove it completely. You can kind of just partially remove it by an opacity adjustment on the brush.
Not on the spot healing brush, but yes, you could do it as a, if we were going to remove, say, this mole right here, we could do that on a separate layer and then do an opacity of that layer and bring the opacity back so that you could see it a little bit, but not completely.
Okay, so you don't have an opacity control on the brush itself?
Not on this brush, no.
Okay.
So how does Rex do that? I'm sorry, we're trying.
Well, you start by duping the layer. You make a duplicate of the layer, and then you can take it off. And as soon as you've taken it off, you go back to the second layer, your safety layer, and you find where you click on the on the upper right hand corner. There is a 100% slider that comes out, and then you just begin slowly sliding it back. Keep watching it until you see it's where you want it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, so I fixed my blemishes, and I can't stop now because you guys. So anyhow, I fixed my blemishes. So my next thing is the next thing I'm going to do is make another copy of the layer. So I want to make sure that I'm copying the layer that I've already worked on. So layer 1 is highlighted, and I'm going to do a Command or Control J and make another copy, layer 1 copy. Now you can rename these, and I find that when I get into something where I've got a whole bunch of layers, renaming them, it becomes very important because then you know what each layer is for. Otherwise, you keep getting layer 1 copy, layer 1 copy, or you don't have any distinction there. As Rex said, edit. So you want to rename them if you're going to do a whole bunch of different layers. I recommend that highly. That way you know what each layer was for. All right, so I duplicated that layer. And in this case, I'm going to do what's called an inverse of the layer. And we can do that quite simply, Control, Command, and the letter I. And yes, it looks weird, but we're going to leave it alone. Once I've inversed that layer, my next thing is to change the blending mode of that. And you can see here, the layer blending mode is normal. I'm going to change that one to, let me see what I wrote down, Vivid Light for this particular one. So now I've made it Vivid Light, and it looks worse, but don't worry, it will get better. So my next step on this layer is to go to, and move this out of my way because it's now in my way. I'm going to go up here to Filter, and I'm going to go down to Other, and then High Pass. And on this particular one, you want the number 24. Okay, so your setting for the high pass needs to be 24. And just simply click OK. Now, very next step, go right back to Filter. We're going to go to Blur, and then we're going to go to Gaussian Blur. And our Gaussian blur is going to be between 3 and 4. And you want to keep it between 3 and 4, not less, not more. And I found that when I did this earlier, 3 worked a little bit better than 4 did. And I'm going to click OK. Now that I've done that, I'm going to put a mask over top of this so I can, because right now it's blurred everything in the picture. It's blurred her hair, her earrings, everything, her eyes, all the stuff we don't really want to be blurred. We want to blur her skin, not everything else. So I'm going to put a mask on this layer so that we can go ahead and paint in where we want the blurring to go. And we can do that by Alt-clicking on, you got the layer highlighted. I want to make sure we have that layer highlighted. And then Alt-click the Japanese flag that we talked about before. Creates a mess. Now you notice it disappeared. So all that blur is gone now, and we're back to here. At this point, we're going to go ahead and just get a brush. Make sure it's kind of soft. So hardness is 0 on there. If you were doing this at home, I would tend to flow it in at about maybe 30 or 40%. I'm going to flow it in at 100 just for the time's sake. If you flow it in a little less, you have to go over it more often to get to where you want to be. I'm going to just flow it at 100 to get it done. Otherwise, we would be here for 25 minutes with me putting this in on her skin. And then I'm just going to make myself a bigger brush, and we're going to, oh, sorry, I forgot. White on your foreground color, because white is the one you need. And I'm going to paint this in on her skin. When you do this part, you don't want to paint in on top of areas that you want to be sharp. So you don't want to paint in over top of her eyes. And of course, when you're doing this for real, you want to be a little bit more careful with it than what I'm going to be right now. But don't paint over top of her lips. Don't paint over top of highlights. So like this little edge right along here with her highlight, you don't want to paint over top of that because you don't want that to blur out. I'm going to go ahead and do her neck and everything at the same time. Okay, and I caught her lip there a little bit. Let's take that back out. If you want to take something back out, turn your color to black, and then it takes that out of where you screwed up and got too close to something. So I can make sure that these are okay. Okay, so that looks horrible, right?
But Brian, I have a question.
Yes.
When you do this, shouldn't you be careful not to go too close, like the line of the nose, so you don't make that blurry? I mean, you want to stay off of the actual edges, like you did on the lips. You want to do it on the nose as well as the chin line and everything else.
Right. I did catch that a little bit too much, so we'll take.
I know you're going fast, but I just wanted to make that point that if you were really doing this, you would take your time and not hit those edges, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Because you want to make sure that when you're done, you'll be able to still see facial features. Otherwise, you've wasted all your time. And so a little bit more like that, so you can see that edge of her nose there. If you guys see that. All right, so that looks, in my opinion, horrible. But once you've done all of that, the next step, and this is the easiest step that brings everything kind of back to reality, is go back over to your opacity. Take your opacity down, and then just start going back up until it looks the way you want it to look. Somewhere about there. That should be, about 60 to 70%. I found it the couple times I did this, it worked out about there. So we can go from, oops, sorry, I turned the wrong one off. That's the original picture. We removed the blemishes, and then we smoothed her skin up a little bit. And I am by no way, shape, or form a portrait retoucher, but you kind of get the general idea of it. It's not really, to do this process is really not a hard process. It took us, even with explanations, 4 or 5 minutes to do that. So this part really wasn't that hard. And I really don't think that that's too awful bad. I mean, you could do some dodging and burning at this point and stuff like that. But as far as a quick portrait retouch, that isn't too bad. And you can still see pores in her skin. You know, if you look at her cheek here, her pore, you know, her skin is still there. It hasn't gotten that smoothness that you see in a lot of retouching that is like I said, it looks like a Barbie doll. So you still have some of that stuff in there, but you've cleaned it up a little bit and made it a little bit better, I believe. What do you think?
Yeah, she doesn't look like a doll.
Yeah, and I think I'll have to rewatch the video and take notes so that I can try to touch up and see if I can get it to work for me. I wanted to watch this time so that I can go back for notes later.
All right. I did put a PS in my notes. I did mention the first one was when you were painting that in, I would paint it in at like a 40% on my brush on the flow, because it, like I said, it's just not putting it all in at one time. You can kind of control how much you're putting in, and you'll get a better control that way. For our purposes, I wanted to do it a little quicker. And when you're using the spot healing brush, let me bring it back up. You should be, for what we were doing, I was using normal with content aware fill for the spot healing brush, and that works really well. Photoshop is really good. It has really gotten a lot better with this as far as how it does its content aware fill stuff. All right. And actually, this is the one I did earlier. And this is the one that we just did. It looks like I might have done a little bit, I don't know, I think I did better the first time. But I did less cleaning up the first time. I didn't clean up as much. So removing too much stuff, I think, can cause you issues as well. Anyhow. All right. If there's no questions about that and you're all good with that, I'm going to stop my screen sharing. And I know Rex got some pictures he wanted to show us on some stuff that he did.
Yeah, I've got some kids that I photographed many years ago. And let me see if I can actually bring them up first. And I might need a little help in getting there. So share. Okay. And let's see, where would I be going from here? I want to go to the, just go into the folder, the Explorer, and put it in pictures. And I have, here we go, up in there. Now, I'm just going to use the Windows system to show these, and I'm not sure, I'm going to have to look at it to see which one I come up with first. I guess it allows me to come in, and we'll take a look at what we were dealing with here. Can you all see it?
Yep.
Okay, so we've had a little bit down here on him, and his sister had a little bit more. So let me put that away. And I can only really show them, I think, one at a time here. Let's see what happens if I go back. Oops, go back. Let's go the other way. I have to take this out of the way. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this is what I wanted to show. I can't show them exactly at the same time, but this was the end result. Okay, so we were able to take the acne out, and I used alternately the clone and the spot healing tube brush in order to do it. And really, that's pretty much the whole story. Let me stick this up in a corner so I can work with it. So that was the last one. I have to take it back to full size before I can move it. Okay. And
I've had that happen to me before, Rex. Just close that and reopen it from your file.
okay.
I don't know why. Sometimes it does that. It won't let you just bounce from one picture to the other once you've expanded the size of it. And
Okay. Let's see. Let's start with really what I wanted to show is the finished work. Obviously, this is, we're going back into a little bit of posing here. A male, straight onto the camera, show off the shoulders, knee up. And females can be posed that way too, especially in sports activity. That's a good way to do that. And let me see, come on there. Let's come in. So here he is without the thing that he has to deal with every day when he wakes up. He actually had quite a bit of it around here too, as you can see it in the other one. And but we got that out. So there it is. So then the next one was his sister, her pose. I won't take too long with these, but the main thing was to show that I was able, as scared as I was, as frightened as I was when I said, oh my God, what am I going to do to myself? This is what we were able to do. Okay. And before and after. And that's my story. Okay?
all right.
Those are excellent, Rex. And anybody can retouch a photo pretty well of a very attractive model. Those were very difficult, challenging photos you started with.
Yeah, these are just normal kids.
Right.
Just right off the street, right out of school. All right, I'm afraid to, I'm not sure if I should exit this off here. I think I can. Yeah, okay, and I'm back. All right. Where do I go from here, guys?
You should be able to see the little green box where it says screen share.
Way down.
No, I've got it all the way. Yeah, let me see. Let me take this off. Let's go to this.
Down below that. At least on my screen, I have a green box.
Yeah.
How about this, Rex?
Yeah. Oh, there we go.
I did it for you.
All right. I'm done.
There you go. Thank you, Rex. Appreciate it.
That was fun.
Well done. Now, how long ago was that?
Oh my goodness. I have to go back and look. That was, it was such a small file. I'll guess that it was around 2002 or 2003 that, yeah, even the full-size file I had in there was small, which says it came from one of my Olympus digital cameras, which is either the 4 megapixel or the 5 megapixel camera.
All right,
Really,
so we're talking probably what, a Photoshop version 2 or 3?
4 or 5, yeah,
4 or 5?
3 or 4, something like that. I've got all the books up here from the very earliest one.
So at this point, do you think that with Photoshop that we have today, it would have taken you less time?
Oh my goodness, yes. Yeah, but well, first of all, because I know more about what to go do.
Right.
I was like everybody else in the beginning. What's this for?
Cool. Thank you, Rex.
Sure.
Okay, guys. Anybody have anything else they want to share or talk about, or?
We can probably mention it in the regular meeting when there's more people, but did you get the email about Jennerstown Speedway?
Oh, yes. Actually, I did have that on my mind to mention. But, for those of you that shot at Jennerstown Speedway last year, you should have received an email saying that they're opening back up. They start racing on June 6th. And if you want to go photograph at the raceway again this year, you're welcome to do that. You do have to contact Roz and let her know that you're going to be there. She'll put you on a list. If you have your very bright yellow shirt or green shirt or whatever color that was, but it was extremely bright, it has to be worn. If you don't have one of those, you have to let her know because you have to have one on while you're there taking pictures. And there's some other rules and regulations that they have for you as far as what you can take. And if you go to a special event, you have to promise to go to 2 of the non-special events so that they're not just giving you tickets for a special event to go to, kind of thing. But it was a fun opportunity for those of us that went last year. I had a blast.
I had a
And,
good time.
Annie was up there. I know DL was there. Melissa was there. I'm trying to think of who else was up there.
Bill, Dorothy,
Bill and Dorothy Rogers was up there. Paul Valerio was up there. There was quite a few of us.
Marcy.
Yeah, Marcy. Well, she's from the Somerset Club, so she would be there more than. But yeah, so that is an opportunity. If you're interested in that opportunity and you want to try that, let me know, and I will get you hooked up with the right people and get you set up to where you can go up and do that. You get to go in and take pictures. You get to go in the infield. You can go anywhere in the pits. You can go anywhere in the stands, and you don't have to pay to get there. So
What's the obligation?
Send them or upload pictures to them by Monday morning. And they use them for their promotional items. They use them for their catalog or for their weekly speedway program, and that kind of stuff. So you get in free. You get to go take pictures. You can use your own pictures. They're not claiming rights to them, but they do use them in their advertising as part of the deal. So if you want to use your pictures for whatever you want, you can do that as well. I think the only thing they said you can't do is you're not allowed to sell them to the racers, if I remember correctly, because they have a track photographer that does that.
Yeah, he's kind of a smart ass.
Yeah. But he minds his own business. You stay away from him, he'll stay away from you. He's not a big deal.
I'll share a story if you want. That I was there. I went on the day that it was a rain out, and but the race car drivers had assembled at a table, a long table, and people were lining up with all of their paraphernalia, their hats, their shirts, all of the things that they wanted to have autographs on. And I was watching, and I was taking pictures of them, but I was watching an old man in a wheelchair that a young man had been pushing him around, and he was eating a pizza, and he was at the far, far end. And when he was done, the line was short, and the fellow who was helping him pushed him around, and he had the box with him, and he put the box on the table, and the race car drivers started signing the pizza box. And that's the end of my story, but I thought it was a sweet little story. I got some pictures of it somewhere, and in my WPS folder. So that was an interesting observation during my time there. End of story.
It's a lot of fun, and everyone, for the most part, is very nice. And they're very excited to have you there and have you taking their pictures. And I've never run into a race car driver, unless he has just crashed his car, that didn't want to have his picture taken.
Yeah.
Now, if he's just tore his car all into pieces and he's not having a good day, don't go over and bug him to take his picture, because you could very easily get punched in the face for that. Because at that point, he's lost a whole bunch of money.
Yeah.
But they are really, really, really nice. And as I've told everyone that has been there, and I've told everyone that has ever thought about going, that I've talked to, if you do go, keep your head on a swivel, pay attention to what's going on, and don't get killed.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because you can get killed.
Well, these guys were all very nice. Every one of them signed that pizza box.
All of them were very nice. We even got offered chocolate milk the one night we went, didn't we, DL?
Wow.
Yeah, we did.
Yep.
And they will ask you where you post your pictures because they want to see them. Unfortunately, we're taking pictures for the speedway, so we really can't post a lot of them for them to get.
Well, you can post them to download themselves. You just can't sell them.
Yeah.
Is their rule? They don't want you to sell them. I know I worked as a track photographer years ago, and I mean, I sold 4x6 prints at like $2 a piece, and I would print several hundred out and sell every one of them every Sunday at the racetrack. Because they want pictures of their car on the track, and they get excited about that. So anyhow, it's a great opportunity. If you went last year and you want to go back, you should have received the email. If you didn't, let me know. And if you decide that you'd like to do that, let me know, and I'll get you hooked up with the right people.
What's the frequency of the races? Every Saturday night or?
Every Saturday. Yeah, every Saturday, weather permitting.
Saturday night?
What's that again?
Saturday night.
Yeah, Saturday night. They open earlier in the day, but I used to leave down here in Masontown at work at 3 o'clock and make it there before the races started, and was able to get in, to get there just as the racing was getting started.
Yeah.
So, and Jennerstown's a good hour and 20 minutes, hour and a half from Mason. So, but the gates open at like noon, I think, or 11 o'clock, and you'll start getting people into the pits and fans there that early, waiting for the racing to start. So.
Oh, I just thought of something else I might add. Now, everybody else probably would not have a problem with it, but the first time I went down, I went down the correct road, and I turned off too soon. I was going into the wrong area. I don't know what was going on up there. What I needed to do is pull back out and go back down into the main area behind the stands. So just in case somebody makes a wrong turn, I guess that's where you would go to get your cars registered or something if you were going to be in the race or something.
Right.
Like that.
You turned into the pit entrance.
Yeah, I didn't want to go with
you want to park you want to park behind the grandstands up there where all the other people park, because you have to sign in at the track office, which is underneath the grandstands. So you have to go in and sign your release and get your wristband, and you have to be on their list to go. So you can't just decide and say, hey, I'm from the Westmoreland Photographers and I'm coming up to take pictures. You have to be on their list or they won't let you in. But yeah, that's that. But yeah, Rex, that was a good point. You want to make sure you park with the general population and don't drive into the pits.
It puts you on the track.
Yeah. Well, you have to cross the track to get into the pits. It's a nice facility, and if you've ever been around racing or anything like that, asphalt racing is at least clean when you're there, so you don't leave there covered in dirt and your camera wondering what you were thinking while you were there taking pictures and that kind of stuff. It's a nice clean place to go, and it's a good place to go. I used to photograph dirt tracks, and I can tell you one thing: your cameras don't enjoy dirt tracks, because they are just that. You're in a dust bowl. But Jennerstown's asphalt, so it's a lot nicer as far as that goes. And when you go, you have to eat a hot dog from the concession stand, because that's like part of going to a racetrack. And if you go to a dirt track, you got to find a dirt track that has an outdoor barbecue where they cook their burgers and hot dogs on an outdoor barbecue. That way they get the dirt right in there with it. So you get the full experience of being in a dirt track. There's nothing like a racetrack hot dog from a dirt track, let me tell you. You don't have to brush your teeth. You already got the grit in there while you're chewing. All right. Well, guys, we're just about at 9 o'clock. I think that was a pretty good meeting. Jim, thank you for your part.
You're welcome.
Rex, thank you for sharing.
Quite all right.
Thank you all for participating, asking questions.
It's good to see Nate.
I did see Nate's, oh, there he is. I was gonna say, I seen him sneak in during one of the videos too.
Where is he?
He just,
Oh, there he is. Okay.
Cape Man.
Yes, the bunny ears don't show.
Hi, Nate.
Oh, look at that handsome guy.
He misses seeing us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you miss us, Nate?
No.
Have you been swimming yet?
No.
How's the fractions coming along?
Yeah.
I think he's been doing fractions, right? Or his mom has.
How's that vocab?
oh, I was a little late going to work this morning, but I made up for it when I handed him the apple pie that I bought last night or yesterday at the wherever it was at, the pie shop.
Yeah, the pie shop.
Yeah.
Yep.
And when I handed him the box, I handed my manager the box and set it down his desk. I said, "Open that." He looked at me. I said, "Go ahead, open it." He opened it up and he went, "Oh, go get the forks." We had apple pie at 9 o'clock this morning.
When's the next meeting?
It's okay. That was fruit for breakfast, right?
Yep. Our next meeting will be the SWG Light meeting, which would be, or no, I'm sorry,
Whoa.
month is, next week would be the first of the month. So our next meeting will be Wednesday night, and it is the last of the Lightroom version for Wednesday night. And then the following week would be our SWG Light meeting on Wednesday night as well.
But the week following is our regular meeting night too, right?
I do believe so. I don't know. I got to look at the calendar and see when the first is.
First is a Monday.
It's
First
June
is
8th.
Monday.
Okay, yeah. Then the following week we would have our regular meeting on the
8th.
8th.
Wait, yeah, I was gonna say I'm looking at the wrong month. On the 8th. Yeah.
We have your mail. We have your mail.
And don't forget on the 27th we're planning on that photo walk out in Ohio, out at Mill Creek Park.
Yeah, I got approved to be off already. Yay.
I didn't ask. I figured I'd wait till the 26th and tell them I'm not coming to work the next day.
No, I went in the office and got the request book down, and the boss was sitting there, so she signed off on it. I got her taken care of in one sweep.
Cool. All right, guys. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Hey, thank you all. I
Thanks,
appreciate
everybody.
it. I think
Thanks again, Brian.
All right. Thank
good meeting
you.
today, guys.
Thanks.
Rex signing off.
All right.
Good night.
Melissa, I sent you an email you should have.
Yes, I saw it come through. Thank you.
See you later.
You can read my handwriting. If not, I'll let you watch the video.
Okay, thanks.
Bye, guys.
Melissa, call me. Give me a call.
Now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Good night, guys. I'm going to end the meeting.
Yeah, at night.